He referred to me as his servant in public, so I left without a word. Now he's struggling and his mom won't stop calling me. Hi, I'm Serena, a 27-year-old woman. My boyfriend, Albert, is 28, and we were together for almost 2 years. We'd been sharing an apartment for about 13 months, not out of some romantic fairy tale, but for practical reasons. His lease ended, my place was falling apart, and I thought living together might be fun. It was, at first, until it wasn't. Let me explain. This past weekend, we got invited to a party by Claire, our landlord's daughter. We barely knew her, we'd only met once. She mentioned we were always reliable with rent and invited us to hang out. Albert was all in, saying it was a networking opportunity. Networking for what? No clue, he's not exactly running a business. I agreed to go because I hadn't been out in ages, and I figured there'd be free snacks. If it got dull, I could slip out early. The party was fancier than expected, not mansion level, but there were real glasses and a decent Bluetooth speaker playing music that didn't sound like it was underwater. Still, the vibe felt off. Claire was dressed in a pricey-looking velvet top, and everyone seemed to know each other except us. Albert was in performance mode, acting like he was hosting a TV show. He was overly touchy, laughing too loudly, and nudging me to work the room with him. I was just there for the snacks. I wandered around, chatting with Claire about our apartment's terrible shower pressure and the weird noises our dryer made. Meanwhile, Albert was already on his second drink before I'd finished my first. I teased him about working hard on a Saturday, and he brushed it off with a jab about needing a break from my constant nagging. It stung, but I let it slide. His sharp comments weren't new, but they'd gotten meaner lately. I know I can be a bit much sometimes, but if I don't remind him about bills, I'm the one getting angry texts from Claire, not him. About 30 minutes in, I realized I was trailing Albert, picking up after him like a shadow. He was chatting with two strangers, saying things like, "Serena's so helpful, keeps my place spotless." His tone wasn't kind, it was mocking. I tried to ignore it, but then he went on about how he never worries about rent because I'm basically his accountant and housekeeper. The guys chuckled awkwardly, unsure if it was a joke. I shot him a look, he just winked. I stepped into the kitchen to grab another drink, fuming. Albert's always been the type to make jokes that cut deep. If I call him out, he'll say, "Relax, it's just a joke, why so sensitive?" But it's always about something I do for him or a mistake I made, like the time I accidentally shrank his hoodie. He'll bring it up like it's hilarious, but if I mention his screw-ups, it's old news. That night, I watched him get drunker, texting my friend Avery under the table to vent before I lost it and threw a chip at him. By 11 p.m., most people were tipsy, but Albert was wasted. I tried getting him to drink water, but he ignored me, talking louder like he was performing for everyone. Claire sat next to me and quietly asked, "Is he always like this?" I shrugged and mumbled something about him having a tough week, which was nonsense. His only problem was leaving his laundry in the washer until it smelled like mold. That's on him. When someone brought up living with partners, Albert saw his moment. He stood, raised his glass like he was giving a speech, and said, "Living with Serena? She's basically my servant with benefits. Great at cleaning toilets and paying rent, but too dull for much else." The room went silent. Claire looked horrified. A few of his buddies laughed, but it was that awkward "please don't involve me" laugh. I stood up quietly and started walking toward the hall. Albert grabbed my wrist, not hard, but enough to annoy me, and said, "Look, she's running off. Sit down, Serena." Then he waved my purse in the air and told everyone, "She doesn't even have the guts to leave." Pathetic, right? Some people laughed enough to make my face burn. Claire stared at the floor. I yanked my wrist free, not gently, and stood there unsure. I didn't want to cry in front of strangers, so I sat back down, clutching my purse. He kept trying to get more laughs, but the mood was souring. For the next hour, I barely moved, staring at my phone's lock screen, pretending to text. I thought about all the times I covered his rent, did his dishes, and picked up his slack. I felt like a fool. This was the guy who used to bring me coffee in bed and say he loved me. Now I was just the punchline to his made jokes. A few people checked on me, asking if I was okay. I said I was just tired. Claire whispered, "You don't have to stay." But I shook my head. I didn't want a scene. Albert was hovering near the door like he was guarding it, scrolling through Instagram, probably texting his friends about how crazy I was. My phone kept buzzing. Avery texted to check on me. I said I'd call later. My mom sent odd late-night texts asking if I'd visit tomorrow. I almost replied just to have an excuse to leave, but I didn't want to start drama in front of everyone. Albert would make a fuss, so I waited. By 2 a.m., people were leaving. I grabbed my coat and walked toward the door. Albert stood there, arms crossed, staring. I didn't say a word, just brushed past him. He muttered something I couldn't hear, probably more of the same. Outside, I stood on the porch, catching my breath. Claire handed me my charger I'd left behind, looking like she wanted to say something but didn't. She just told me to text her about the dryer if it got worse. I nodded, thanked her, and left. The 10-minute walk home was spent replaying everything in my head. At the apartment, I went straight to bed. Albert stumbled in, slamming the door, not even glancing at me. He kicked off his shoes and went to the bathroom. I lay there, scrolling Reddit, jotting notes in my app so I wouldn't forget details. I was shaking with anger, unsure what to do next, but I knew I wasn't letting this go. If you're interested, I'll share part 2. This was a mess to write. I'm still furious. Update 1, I didn't expect to be back so soon, but you all asked for more, and typing this is keeping me from yelling at my phone. I'm running on 4 hours of sleep and a giant iced coffee, which isn't calming my nerves. Here's what happened next. I woke up after that awful party to a flood of notifications. Albert's mom had called 20 times, leaving texts like, "Please call, are you okay? What's going on with Albert?" He'd even missed a FaceTime with his sister. I silenced my phone and stared at the ceiling, not ready to deal with it. Albert was passed out on the couch, which was odd. He only sleeps there for dramatic effect. I think he crashed after getting home. I grabbed cereal and he mumbled something, then rolled over. The kitchen was a disaster. Old Solo cups from last week, a sink full of his dishes, and sticky counters from his failed margarita experiment. It looked like a toddler's birthday party gone wrong. I stood there, realizing I'm always the one cleaning up. He claims he doesn't see messes, but he notices when I miss a spot. I sat with my coffee, debating my options. I could leave, tell Claire he's on his own for rent, and crash with my mom or Avery. But I wanted him to feel the consequences of his mess, literal and figurative. I was done being the bigger person. I'm petty, and I'm okay with it. I started a list in my notes app. Every time I paid his share of rent, every bill I covered, every cleaning supply I bought, every random item I grabbed for him. The list was long: toilet paper, paper towels, Swiffer refills, laundry cards, light bulbs, his favorite scented candle. I found Venmo receipts from last year when I paid his internet for 3 months because his account was locked. He never paid me back, just said, "I'll get it next time." Sure, the more I listed, the angrier I got. I started snapping photos of the apartment. The couch, mine. The TV, mine. Plates, silverware, microwave, linens, all mine. His stuff, an ugly lamp from his parents and a broken kettle he swore he'd replace. I texted Avery asking to borrow her car next weekend. She replied with a middle finger emoji and say less. Love her. I ignored Albert all morning. He shuffled into the kitchen at noon, looking rough, dramatically pouring water and rubbing his temples. I scrolled my phone, refusing to make him breakfast. He tried small talk, claiming he didn't remember last night. I said, "You said enough." He got defensive, saying, "I was joking, everyone does that." I stared, silent. He stormed back to the couch. My mom called, asking if I'd come to dinner. She sensed something was wrong, but I said I wasn't feeling well and would text later. She asked if Albert was coming. I laughed. She didn't push, just said to call if I needed her. I should have told her, but I wasn't ready for the "we warned you" lecture. Albert spent the afternoon on TikTok and texting his buddies, Carson and Andrew. I overheard him laughing, then going quiet. I peeked and saw their group chat discussing how awkward last night was. Someone said Claire seemed annoyed. Albert replied, "She'll get over it." I screenshotted it just in case, not for blackmail, but to prove he knows he's a jerk. By 5 p.m., I started packing small things: chargers, makeup, favorite hoodie, headphones, books, laptop. Stuff he wouldn't notice. I put them in my car. He didn't ask where I was going, just told me to grab chips if I went to the store. I slammed the door. At Avery's, she handed me a soda and played music. I almost cried but held it together. Back home, Albert was on Xbox, yelling about Spawn camping. I went to the closet, folding my clothes into a laundry bag. He asked what I was doing. I said, "Laundry." He shrugged and went back to his game. I made dinner for myself. He asked where his was. I told him to make his own. He pouted like a kid. I walked past him to my room. I texted Claire, checking on her. She said she was embarrassed about the party and apologized for Albert's behavior, offering help with the apartment. I asked if her dad would let Albert stay if I left. She said, "You're not on the lease, right?" "Just him," I confirmed. When we moved in, he handled the paperwork and left my name off, saying it was simpler. Claire said he's responsible for rent then. I felt a bit better. Next morning, I packed more. The router mine, coffee maker, knives, blender, throw pillows, air fryer. I left his junk, old laptop, gaming chair, tangled wires he'll organize someday. Avery helped move heavier stuff. Albert asked what we were doing. I said, moving things. He nodded and went inside. I kept essentials for the next day, bed, dresser, bathroom stuff. I planned to finish when he was at the gym, Tuesday at 6 p.m. like clockwork, always posting a sweaty Snapchat selfie. I texted Claire I'd be out by the weekend, leaving keys in the mailbox. Albert acted like nothing was wrong, asking if I wanted to watch TV. I said no. He pouted again, saying the kitchen was empty. I told him to go to the store. He asked why I was being like this. I said, "You know what you did." He rolled his eyes and left. I locked myself in the bathroom for 20 minutes. My mom called. I told her I was moving out. She wasn't surprised, just offered help or a place to stay. I said I'd be fine, thanks to Avery. The next day, Albert left for the gym at 6 a.m. Avery came over, and we packed the rest of my stuff. I left a note on the counter listing everything he owes me, rent, bills, groceries, supplies, and wrote, "Your turn to pay, don't forget the toilets." I put my keys in the mailbox and left. The apartment felt empty, almost sad, but I didn't look back. At Avery's, we watched YouTube videos and she gave me a drink. My mom texted that she was proud. I didn't reply yet, I needed space. That night, Albert texted furious, saying I blindsided him and was selfish for leaving him with the bills. I didn't respond. He called repeatedly. I blocked him, his mom, his sister, and his friends. I told Claire I was out. She thanked me and said Albert hadn't paid rent yet. I replied, "Good luck with that." So I'm done. I left him with his mess, literal and metaphorical. He wanted to be the big shot, always right. Now he can figure out how to clean up after himself. I'm not done entirely. If he wants to play games, I'm ready. But for now, he can stew. Maybe he'll finally see who's really pathetic. Let me know if you want another update.